Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome to my backyard and welcome back to the series I'm doing on building this big bandsaw mill. If this is your first time here, there'll be a link up in the cards and down in the description to a playlist that contains all the videos that bring you up to where we are right now. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the upper section here of the lift mechanism, both the lift motor as well as the chain, which is not on here right now, which will actually link the two lifting columns together and allow them to turn in unison. So we're going to get started with taking a look at the lift motor, which if you've been kind of watching these in real time, this lift motor has been up here for quite a while. I was always planning to include the lift motor with the whole linking mechanism, but I had a temporary linking mechanism that worked just fine, which I ended up using for a while. So now we're kind of getting back into it. We're going to jump back in time and take a look at everything that went into getting this motor right here. So here is the motor I got to run the lift. This is a 3/4 horsepower motor, 3-phase, and it's connected to a gearbox. The gearbox has a 17-to-1 reduction, and the output torque on the shaft over here is 544 inch-pounds. To raise the lift, it requires 40-ish foot-pounds. If I try with a torque wrench, it takes about 38 to 40 foot-pounds to get the thing to turn, and then to go down, it takes about 25 foot-pounds. So this should have enough torque coming directly out of here, but I also have a reduction on the sprockets. So I have the VFD outfitted with a forward and reverse switch, as well as a potentiometer to control the speed. So that works really nicely. You can just turn the potentiometer, the motor will turn on, and you can set the speed to whatever you want. So in theory, as I'm creeping up on the right height on the mill, I can dial the speed back and just control it with just a potentiometer. And then the same thing with the reverse. I have it set to stop pretty much immediately. So if you're just have it on full power and it's just going up and down, and you could stop it right on the number if you're fast enough, I guess. The other thing, this motor does have a brake inside of it, and as soon as the motor stops receiving any electricity, the brake engages and it'll stop the shaft on the motor. So here's the electrical box. You have the 3 wires coming in from the VFD, ground, and then the other thing I had to do here was wire up the brake to receive voltage. So that, in this case, there's a diagram right on here which tells you which terminals need to have power to them to disengage the brake. This went a lot easier than my prior experiences with VFDs. The manual for this stuff, or this section of using a VFD, was pretty straightforward. I guess this is pretty common stuff to do. So the potentiometer is wired down here to H, O, and L, and then the rocker switch is connected up here, up top to L, 1 and 2, with L being the ground and then 1 and 2 being forward and reverse. So of course this wouldn't be a sawmill video without some issue that I need to resolve. The specs on this motor listed the shaft size at 1 3/16 of an inch, but in reality this is actually a metric. This is 17 millimeters, and my 1 3/16 shaft stock that I bought is too big to go into the shaft hole thing here. The difference between 1 3/16 and 17 millimeters is about 6/1000 of an inch. So I need to reduce the shaft size by 6/1000. I'm not too worried about it being super perfect since this is a relatively low speed application. And if I screw it up, I only need an 8-inch section of shaft, actually probably a little bit less than that. I have a 3-foot section here, so I have a lot of tries if I do screw it up. Next, I have to make a mount for the motor. I have a piece of 1/4-inch plate, and I welded that to a scrap piece of tube. And that piece of tube is going to offset the motor away from the carriage a little bit to give clearance for the chain that's going to link the motor to the lifting column. Those holes line up pretty well, so now I'm going to mark these out and then cut the slots with the angle grinder. All right, that wasn't that bad. All right, so I still have to tension the chain up top that connects the motor to the lifting rods, so there's a little bit of a slack kick in there, and they're not aligned either. The motor chain is lower. The sprocket on the motor is too low right now, so it's kind of acting a little goofy. So I got a little bit of tweaking to do on there, and I got to finish the tensioning on the linking chain. But proof of concept, this does work. So originally, because I just wanted to get this whole thing running, I had the linking chain going directly from one lifting rod directly across to the other one through the center area of the carriage, which worked out just fine. It works fine. The only problem is that because of the way this is designed, with the motor up on top of the saw head, the motor needs to be able to come up through this area right here of the carriage, and with the linking chain running from post to post, that would be directly above the motor and wouldn't allow the motor to come up high enough to get to that maximum height. So that wasn't really a huge problem because I didn't have anything big enough that I need to get the saw head that high, so it really wasn't an issue. But now I'm ready to get back into it and finish up kind of what I started and get this thing designed and built as it's supposed to be, or built as it was designed. So let's get started on the linkage. If we take a look at the chain routing and specified in the plans, you can see the chain now runs along the front beam of the carriage. We have one coming along the inside, and then the main part comes around the outside. So with this arrangement, there are a couple of components that I need to make, and they're going to look something like this. We have the piece over here, which is going to slide along the top and actually do the tensioning, and we also have this piece over here, which is going to hold this idler sprocket. Now in the plans, this just gets welded onto the carriage at the time of construction, and you're good to go. I already painted mine. I don't feel like grinding off all of the paint and welding this on, so I'm going to make a bolt-on option for that. But I'm going to get started by fabricating the tensioning idle sprocket adjuster mechanism thingamabobber. So I have the tensioning sprocket mount all completed. I also made this component over here, which is this guy right here. Basically the same exact thing, just no slot, so it's going to be bolted directly to the top of the carriage. And the next thing I need to make is the actual screw advanced tensioning mechanism holder thingamabobber. Just basically a little bracket that holds the screw that will push into here. And again, because I want this to be bolt-on, I'm going to make this out of a piece of angle. It's the same exact stuff that I used for the stop to the carriage, and in fact this is probably going to look a lot like the carriage stops. So here are the 3 components all ready to go. At this point, they're ready to be all cleaned up and paint prepped and painted, and then we can get them mounted up on the mill. So these things clean up pretty nicely now that they have some paint on there. So let's go ahead and start getting these things all installed. I'm gonna start with this guy. So the tensioning one's gonna go over here on this side. So I'm going to take down my sign and find a new spot for it. Kind of stinks because I really like this spot. And let's put the sprocket up here now while I'm here. And now lastly, I can install the little piece that pushes against that tensioner. A couple of bolts to go. So now with this outside idle sprocket mounted, I can work on mounting the inside idle sprocket. So this piece of roller chain is going to come off the drive sprocket out here to the front, and then this other piece is going to come around and kind of turn around through here and then travel along the front rail of the carriage to get to the other side. So the plans call for a nut to be welded to the inside here, but once again, because I don't feel like stripping paint up in the air, I'm going to use a tap to tap a hole to mount this thing directly to the underside of the carriage. And I'm going to use some washers as a spacer that's going to take up the same thickness as a nut, which is a 1/2 inch. So all I'm doing here is using the roller chain on here so I can make sure I get this thing the right distance from the front post so that it is close enough to give me the most amount of clearance to run this chain as close to the front face or the front inside face of the front of the carriage as possible, but also allow me to be able to slip the roller chain on and off without this sprocket being too close to the front of the carriage. So probably somewhere in this area here. So with all these sprockets installed, next I can work on getting a roller chain on there. Before I do that, I want to make sure the beam is as close to parallel to the bed as possible. So that shouldn't be too bad. I'm just going to measure from the bed up to the beam and just turn the rods until the beam is parallel or the measurement is the same on both ends. So the chain breaker leaves me with a length of chain that's ready to be connected. And I can do that with the connecting link. So this will link these two chains together, this new piece and the old piece. So all I have to do now is get up there and join them together. To make it a little bit easier to make sure these are like the right distance apart, I've got this puller tool which will pull the links together the right distance so I can get the connecting link installed. And now the last thing on the list is to tension the chain. Hopefully this goes uneventfully. At this point I kind of wonder, like, am I one link too long? Yeah, go back and take a link out. Looks like it might be all right. Still got about another inch. That's it. Let's get the motor hooked up. So here's the old chain. I opened up the connecting link. This is going to be a little long, so got to get it shortened up to fit. Since I used to have that bigger sprocket over here. Go to this one here. So now I can tension the chain, and to do that, just loosen the mounting bolts in the back and tighten up the tensioning bolts. Ugh. And once again, I hope I have enough travel, which I should. Let's see, I might have to take another link out. So I want to get this tension to be even on both sides, so I'll adjust the lift manually to turn it this way, to pull the tension side to this side, so I can, too much. There, just keep going a little more. Oh, please tell me I'm not out of travel. And that's it. Yeah. All right, well, I guess I am going to be taking another link out. That's fine. At least it's easy. Let's do that all over again. All right, let's try it out. Oh yeah. Up we go. Yeah. This is incredible. It's just awesome to see this finally at its actual working potential. The motor now slips up past the top of the carriage. There's nothing in its way, and I'm just getting excited to cut stuff. So at this point, now that the lift is totally done and ready to go, I can get the guards back on, start getting the stuff put back together, and almost done finally, for real this time. So that'll take the top off a pretty big log. So probably the best part of the whole putting this thing back together experience was when I got the blade on there and I started turning the wheels. It was still tracking correctly, and even the guides were still set correctly. All I had to do was just tighten up the side and the bottom bolts, I think, the ones I loosened, and that brought them back into the exact same position that they were in when I took this thing off. So those should be good to go, although I might just make sure at some point that the blade is still tracking parallel to the bed, but I'm not too worried about that at this point, because I did cut a little tiny baby walnut log and the saw still made its way through that with no problem. Of course, that's not much of a challenge for this thing, but it just feels good to know that even though I took this thing completely apart, I was able to get it back together and cutting again. So that just makes me pretty happy about the whole situation. So that's it for this one. Next time we're going to take care of some more smaller things, especially the lube system. That's going to be the main focus of that video, and a couple of little things, and then we're going to be pretty much done with the manual-ish version of this sawmill. And I'm very much looking forward to kind of concluding this little part of the larger ongoing series. So thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments on the sawmill, anything back in the shop, please feel free to leave me a comment. I'll also be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking.